Hi, in this video about VIA 1.8 I want to present you new functionality when dealing with XY data. Often you don't have just one coordinate per record, but multiple. For example, you could have a list of trips, each one with the origin and the destination coordinate, or some population statistics with the coordinate of the home location, the work location, and let's say a shopping location. Let's take the example with the trips. In previous versions of VIA, when you first wanted to show the origins and later the destinations, you had to reload the whole dataset and specify which coordinate you were interested in. Especially for large datasets, this was cumbersome. Now in VIA 1.8 you just load the dataset, and then you can configure what coordinates you have in your data. In our example, going to the XY layers setup dialog, we have a new section at the top named Coordinates. Here we can specify that we have an origin coordinate and a destination coordinate, and we can configure which coordinate we want to visualize. Let's first visualize the origins, and now we can easily switch to the destination coordinates. This is much faster than reloading the whole dataset. Having two or more coordinates per record, we can now go further. For example, it could be interesting to see the actual trips, the connections between the origins and the destinations. For this, we can switch to the new section named Lines and Areas. Select Lines along coordinates and add the coordinates, first the origin, then the destination. If we now click on Apply, we start seeing the lines. And as you're used to in VIA, you can style the lines depending on attribute values. Now let's switch to another case, where we have three coordinates. I keep the example very simple, so it's easier to understand. Let's first have a look at the data. We have three coordinates per record, x1 and y1, x2 and y2, and x3 and y3. Then we have an ID, which is the same for both records, and the time attribute. So let's load this file in VIA. Create the XY layer, and configure the three coordinates. Now, let's again enable the lines and define the three coordinates. When we click Apply, we suddenly see two triangles. We can now adapt line color, line width, or the fill color. But that's not yet all. Remember that we had some more attributes in our data, namely an ID and a time. And what can you do with VIA's XY layer if you have a time attribute? Yes, we can animate the points. There's just one catch. We don't have just one point, we have 3 points that span a triangle. Let's see what happens in this case. We switch to the Trajectories panel and specify that we want to group our data records by the ID attribute. Then we specify that we have a time attribute named time, and we want the time-dependent display to last until the next start time. Finally, let's interpolate the location, and we are good to go. If we start animating the view now, you suddenly see the triangle change its position. Why is that? Because each corner of the triangle is defined by a point whose position is interpolated over time. We could now even, for example, set the fill color to be dependent on the time attribute. At the start, let's make it blue, and at the end, make it red. And now let's have a look at it. This makes it very easy to create powerful data-driven animations in VIA. But there is one more thing I'm pretty sure the heavy visualization users of VIA will love as well. Sometimes, for complex visualizations, one would like to show some custom information as overlay in VIA. The problem until now? The data was always visualized in the same coordinate system as other data. So when you zoomed in or out, your XY dataset would zoom as well. And that's not really useful for an overlay. So, VIA 1.8 now allows you to specify that the data should be visualized relative to the screen. Let's do this. As an example, I have here some sort of a countdown. It counts down the last 10 minutes before 8 o'clock. The coordinate is always set to 0, 0. Let's add this to Vaya and set it up to show the text as label and make it time dependent. Let's make the label text a bit bigger. OK. And in the Coordinates panel, switch to Display. Here we can specify that the data should be shown relative to the viewing area. Let's activate this, move it to the top center and click Apply. OK, we now barely see the point up here, so let's add an offset and move it down a bit. And here we have it. Let's hide the symbol, and we have a custom time-dependent overlay. If we start the animation, we see how the label changes. We could add another dataset, this time each record with 2 coordinates to display a line. In addition, we have an attribute color that we will use later as well. So let's add this file and create a layer for it. Now set it up. First, define the 2 coordinates. Next, make the coordinates time dependent as we're used to. Then hide the symbols but show a line instead. And at last, make the color of the line dependent of the color attribute. Let's see what colors we have in the dataset. OK, black, white and red. So set them accordingly. Now, as a last thing, make sure it is displayed relative to the viewing area, set the proper offset, and we should be good to go now. So, just to prove it, let's add some network behind it. Zoom to it and let the time run. And as you see, we can now move around the network, zoom in and zoom out, but the dynamic overlay stays in place. I hope you liked that video showing some of the cool new visualization features of the powerful XY layer in Vaya 1.8. Bye!